Hello, everyone. Welcome to Empowering Democracy. The topic of this stream is taxing people and taxing windfall profits. Let's get to taxing people. I'll share a piece. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, I see what I did. Okay, wait just a second. We'll take a moment to line this up properly. And one more thing to do here. Okay. So I'm sharing a piece from Common Dreams right now. There's a picture of Jerome Powell, otherwise known as Jay Powell, chair of the Federal Reserve. Of the Federal Reserve Bank Board. A progressive economists warn, quote, of catastrophic outcomes, unquote, for workers as Fed hikes interest rates. This, of course, is a continuing story. It's been going on for months now. Each time the Fed gets ready to make another interest rate hike, the progressive economists come out and point out they are risking a catastrophic outcome for workers. This is not new, but it's still important to notice it. This piece was by Brett Wilkins, November 2nd, 2022. This is the fourth consecutive increase of 0.75%, 75 basis points, and the sixth hike of the year. So progressive stressed Fed policy boosts the likelihood of a global recession and disproportionately harms low-income workers and other marginalized people. In other words, raising the interest rates is a tax on people. And it's not even a fair tax that goes across all people, but it harms low-income workers and other marginalized people to a greater degree. So it's not even a tax that's fair, okay, and equitable. Fed Chair Jerome Powell explained the move was necessary to ease inflation, which has hit a 40-year high due to factors including corporate profiteering, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the climate emergency. Corporate price gouging is often, of course, characterized as, profit profiteering is often characterized as corporate price gouging. Powell said, we've always said it's going to be difficult, but to the extent rates have to go higher and stay higher for longer, it becomes harder to see the path, unquote, to avoiding recession. Powell added, I would say the path has narrowed over the course of last year, and progressive economists and activists refuted the Fed's approach. Okay. Accountable.us spokesperson Liz Zelnick noted in a statement that, quote, a chorus of economic experts have warned hiking interest rates again is a recipe for millions of Americans receiving pink slips. Yet the Fed has decided to triple down on what is not working. And of course, she's right in pointing out that raising interest rates has not been working. It's not working. There's no empirical evidence supporting that it works. And Robert Reich suggests, why not target an actual driver of inflation, price gouging corporations? Hello? And he plays one of his patented cartoon drawing things to point out that it does not work. I can't play too much of this, I don't think, because it's copyrighted, but it's something you can play when you go to Bob's video on the subject. Anyway, quote, throughout the pandemic, the Fed should have been acting as stewards of the fragile economic recovery, but instead have prioritized demands from big banks, hedge funds, and other Wall Street special interests at the great expense of average working families, unquote. She contended. If excessive interest rate hikes hasten the arrival of an otherwise avoidable recession, will the Fed take responsibility, unquote, added Zelnick, I'll quote again, or try to pass the buck as they keep making matters worse, unquote. Well, of course, we expect they're going to try to pass the buck, right? And Demand Progress says Fed Chair Powell is on record saying these interest rate hikes aren't designed to lower prices, but to lower wages. The strategy is clear: increase unemployment plus increase employers' power. If the Fed doesn't slow down, they will force a recession. Of course, that leads to greater inequality. So the strategy is clear: increase unemployment, increase employers' power, increase inequality. That's what this is about. AFL President Liz Schuler said the Fed's latest rate hike, quote, will have a direct and harmful impact on working people and our families, unquote, and, quote, will not address the underlying causes of inflation. The Fed seems determined to raise interest rates, though it openly admits those rates could ruin our current economy as unemployment remains low and people are able to find jobs, she continued. A recession would instead cause companies to hire fewer people, making it harder for young workers, workers of colors, and others who have greater barriers finding jobs, and put downward pressure on wages of all working people who will bear the brunt of an overactive monetary policy, unquote. Quote again, working people should not be the target of lowering inflation, Schuler added. It should be corporations that are earning record profits. But where's Jay Powell from? Well, he's from Wall Street, right? So you expect that he would set up working people as the target of lowering inflation. It was a predictable thing when Biden appointed him. Biden could have appointed Sarah Bloom Raskin or Lael Brainard to head the Fed, but instead he reappointed Jay Powell. So there you go. For the sixth time this year, Groundwork Collaborative points out the Fed jacked up interest rates and for the sixth time pushed us precariously closer to a recession that will depress wages, kill jobs, and hurt millions of families. The cure is certainly worse than the disease. Yep, I think so too. Anticipating Wednesday's rate hike, Groundwork Collaborative Chief Economist Rakeen Mahmood argued Wednesday that the move is a, quote, misguided policy with catastrophic outcomes for the millions around the country who are already struggling to make ends meet, unquote. And quote again, the Fed's rate hiking frenzy is doing everything but lowering prices, unquote. She said, quote again, wage growth is slowing and mortgage rates are the highest in 20 years. If Powell wants to be taken seriously as a responsible steward of the economy, he should think twice before raising rates again. Robert Reich tweeted, quote, a memo to the Fed. Interest rate hikes aren't working because inflation is being driven by corporations using it as a cover to price gouge the people. Well, that sentiment that the cause is price gouging, the primary cause is price gouging, is getting some play or some support. There are some people who believe it or partly believe it anyway. And here we have maybe Joe Biden believing it. You're looking at another article from Common Dreams. There's Biden. Quote, could be a political game changer. Biden to float windfall profits tax on oil giants. Oh, that could be good. This is by Jake Johnson, October 31st, 2022. Following months of sustained pressure from progressive campaigners and members of Congress, President Joe Biden on Monday is reportedly planning to suggest imposing a windfall profits tax on oil companies if they refuse to boost their production and lower costs for consumers. Biden is set to float the popular tax proposal during a White House speech at 4:30 p.m. ET, days after oil companies in the U.S. and Europe reported massive, and in the case of ExxonMobil, record-shattering profits for the third quarter of this year. The Washington Post reported the president is not expected to formally endorse the tax, but instead to urge that one should be explored if the energy giants do not expand their output. The White House has been frustrated by what aides see as energy companies' use of record profits to reward shareholders rather than produce more product and bring down prices at the pump. The Post added, citing unnamed people familiar with Biden's planned remarks. According to the watchdog group Accountable.us, Chevron and Exxon have delivered $32 billion to shareholders in the form of dividends and stock buybacks this year, as consumers in the U.S. and around the world have struggled to afford high gas prices, while a number of countries, including the UK, have imposed windfall profits taxes on energy giants in recent months. The United States has yet to take such a step, which would require the approval of Congress. Quote, this is the right thing for President Biden to do, Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, one of the leading congressional advocates of a windfall profits tax, tweeted Monday. in response to news of Biden's address, which will come just over a week before the midterm elections. Back in March, Ghana introduced a bill that would tax the excess profits of oil giants and return money to U.S. households in the form of a quarterly rebate. It is time to hold big oil accountable for high gas prices and put that money back in the pockets of Americans, Ghana added. Biden has repeatedly criticized oil companies for raking in huge profits at the expense of U.S. consumers, but he's thus far stopped short of backing specific legislative action to punish the fossil fuel industry over its profiteering, despite survey data showing that a windfall profits tax is extremely popular with the U.S. public. One poll conducted in March found that 80% of U.S. voters, including 73% of Republicans, support, quote, placing a windfall profits tax on the extra profits oil companies are making from the higher gasoline prices they are charging because of the Russia-Ukraine situation, unquote. So, 73% of Republicans, 80% of all U.S. voters support placing a windfall profits tax. Why don't we have a windfall profits tax already? That poll was conducted in March. It is now November, and we still don't have a windfall profits tax. Even though it must be, well, it is, 80% of U.S. voters want that tax. If 73% of the Republicans want it, then it must be 85% of U.S. voters who are not Republicans who want it. And the 85% can't get Congress to act? Another indication of where our democracy is at, right? It isn't at a good place. Or that bill would have been passed in April, right after the survey was reported out. Jamie Henn, the director of Fossil Free Media and a spokesman for the Stop the Oil Profiteering campaign, cited that data point to argue the president's speech Monday could be a political game changer for Democrats ahead of the midterms. This is exactly the type of leadership we've been waiting for from President Biden. Henn said in a statement, Big Oil has made nearly $300 billion in excess profits this year by gouging us at the pump. A windfall profits tax can provide immediately relief by redirecting that money into the pockets of hardworking Americans. From a political standpoint, Henn argued a windfall tax is a clear way for Democrats to play offense against opponents who are in the pockets of big oil, an approach that progressive lawmakers such as Senators Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders have been advocating for months as Republicans continue to oppose legislation to fight corporate price gouging. Quote, President Biden is right, unquote, Sanders tweeted Monday at a time when Exxon, Shell, and Chevron increased their profits by 168% to $81 billion in the last 2 quarters by charging outrageously high prices at the pump. We need a windfall profits tax. The revenue should go directly back to the American people. So, of course, we all agree on that, right? But we got to note, if that windfall profits tax has not passed, that's because of a very poor state of democracy in our country. Should have been passed a long time ago, probably even before that survey was done, because it was pretty obvious that they were price gouging us back in March. there were a lot of economists who were saying the price gouging was a major feature in causing inflation at that time. Some other thoughts on this. Uh, Biden is finally making a move, but he also probably knows it's never going to pass. Uh, so he's trying to get some credit without having to pay any price. Uh, Also, furthermore, we should note a windfall profits tax is fiscal policy. People have been saying for a long time the way to fight this inflation is not by using monetary policy at all, but using fiscal policy of various kinds. And one of the favorite measures of fiscal policy, which has been mentioned in these debates, is a windfall profits tax. So here it is again. Will it be passed before the election? Will Democrats get together and rush it through before Tuesday and give us some headlines? I don't think so. Biden proposed it, but that's not going to be enough to get people any votes, is it? So that's what I have to say about taxing people and taxing profits. Okay, at this point, I will see you again at 12:30 when I have another stream coming up. Oh, I forgot to mention, I should never forget to mention, please visit my Patreon account. And please visit also my Buy Me a Coffee account. Well, let me get you those links. Buy Me a Coffee link is www.buymeacoffee.com /Joe.Firestone. And my Patreon account is patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. So please visit those occasionally. And please also come back. Come back at 12:30 today. And then I have another stream I'll be doing at 9 p.m. That will be on the elections and where they stand right now. So once again, I'll see you at 12:30. Thank you for coming to this one. Thank you, Dolores. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Steve Ghoststart. And Steve Ghoststart said, just left a mind-bogglingly ignorant Social Security taxpayer thread. I just couldn't. Yeah, I know. Those are mind-bogglingly ignorant because the politicians keep on repeating the falsehood. That's all people hear. Taxpayer dollars, taxpayer dollars, taxpayer dollars. Okay, I'm leaving. I'm going to maybe eat something in the interim. Got another half hour. And I'll see you again at 12:30.